me, I just did this on like spur of the moment and stuff like that, and maybe get some more insight if you have any questions, or Chang, if you have any questions. I know
Yeah,
I have lots of questions, and I know
I have a lot of questions.
good, good,
So
good, good,
hopefully I
good.
can answer some of them.
And Clint, I have known Clint ever since we were doing undergraduate school and stuff like that. So he's very smart. He knows coding,
Wow.
and then also he's actually moving um, away from coding to get into project management. So
Wow.
yeah, so kind of cool.
Or,
So
yeah.
yeah.
So I'm actually just starting school right now. I'm working, or going to start on an MBA, try to get an MBA, move to the sort of the product side of things. And, so I've been on the development side for so many years that I've kind of gotten, I feel like I've fulfilled that part of my life. And now I'm going to sort of change careers to the other side and work on the product side, the product marketing side. And so that's still in the same line of things. And in between there comes the UX side of things, and the design. And design is in every part. So it's like at every level there's design. So that's and so I'm just starting a new program. I'm doing the online MBA program because everybody's doing online these days, and some of the UCs are now. And I'm going to UC Davis. I'm going to do the online program there, and sort of switch from doing programming and development to using Excel spreadsheets. It's going to be a huge leap. But I've been doing this for 23 years now, so I feel like it's time to shake it up a little bit. And Terry has been kind of my role model in terms of shifting directions and trying new things and stuff like that, because she's like the master of that. So
yeah, I push him. I don't think he has a choice.
I don't have a choice. There's this remote control attached to the back of my head. She just kind of.
Okay, and we have one more person coming in. Gail. Let me see. Okay, so now she's connecting, or he. Sorry, I don't want to assume. Sorry. Gail, can you hear us? Can you see us?
I can hear you and I can see you.
Okay, we can't see. Well, it's by choice. If you want to be on video, awesome. If not, great. So anyway, Gail, thank you for joining. This was a last minute spur. I'm going to introduce you to everybody. So if I say your name, just wave. This is Kelsey. She's actually a student of mine from, there we are.
Actually, we were just talking in Slack not that long ago. So, hey, Gail.
Oh, okay. Well, Kelsey, great. That's awesome. So, and this is Chang, that basically he went through Career Foundry Bootcamp with me a couple years ago, and this is Clint, a really good friend of mine. We've been friends for over 15, 20 years. He's
over 20 years.
Yeah, over 20 years. He's been doing development work for a while, and then actually he's actually getting out of development work and getting into project management and stuff. And basically a lot of students have been asking me, well, like, how do you work with a developer, or tips or tricks? And basically Clint has led a team of developers, been a developer, been in the hot seat of pants when like project just blows up in your face. And he works with designers before, and basically he can tell you firsthand, like, I don't say pitfalls, but maybe pet peeves that maybe designers don't quite understand, or to work well with a technology, I guess you would say. So it's pretty much open forum and stuff like that. So if you have a question, that's why I kind of do it last minute. So basically it's just a little smaller group and stuff, but maybe next time I may advertise, I don't know, and just put a cap on it and stuff like that. So any questions? Oh, for Clint?
So I haven't actually. Okay, sorry. My husband and I are like both video
Using the-
chatting in the same room, so working out logistics. He's leaving. So I have not worked with the. I mean, I'm not technically doing UX yet. I am a landscape architect and urban planner, and so I work doing that on a day-to-day basis. But they were just asking me. They were looking to find a company that might develop apps or websites so that we can kind of start pushing some of our work into a little bit more of a virtual sense. And I was like, oh, well, I might be able to help with that, but I am by no means a developer. And so I guess my one question is, if I were to just kind of start thinking about this, come up with an idea, what level of detail do people need to have in order to then turn to a developer and be like, hey, can you help me make this real?
Okay, Clint, I'm gonna let you answer that one.
So, okay, so is this a contract project that you're possibly going to do for somebody, or like you're going to build an app for somebody, or what?
It's just at my own company, and it might be we're doing a specific project and we want to do a town hall meeting where we're getting just members of the public to come in, and we're now realizing like, oh, well, that might not work as easily in the future. So how can we start to also create things where either, I haven't gone very far with my thought process, but you know, how do we create an experience so that someone can do this virtually? Is it on a website and they can kind of do some AR, like kind of walk around a room and still have it feel like they're engaging? Or could it be that we actually have an app that goes along with our project that people who want to follow the progress and participate multiple times can be doing it that way? They just asked me a week ago, so I have 1 week of thought into this, but one of my questions was, well, cool, so if I have an idea, but how do I actually make it real? Like, what do I need to have in order to turn to a developer? Do I need to have full-blown prototype of everything about the app or the website, and then I kind of hand that off to a developer? Or I'm 1 month or 1.5 months into UX training, so I'm also trying to determine, like, do you ever collaborate with UX designers on, you know, someone comes and says like, I want to do this, is this realistic or feasible, or am I just shooting myself in the foot here?
So what you said right there is pretty important, because it's sort of at the idea level. When you're thinking about things, it's good to, like, one, you want to kind of sit down and kind of draw ideas on paper, because paper is the cheapest way to start off. It doesn't require a tremendous amount of effort. It's a pencil and an eraser, and just come out with a whole bunch of ideas, right? Brainstorm. You could even, if you have other folks that you could interact with initially, and so kind of write your ideas down and draw them out, you know. And so say, because you have a problem, and your software is a solution to the problem. So in a way, you need to start off with why you're building this thing. Right. What's the ask? What is it that you know, there's a problem and you are providing a solution, and what is the solution possibly going to be? When you get to the point where you then are talking about AR, you know, in a room, or you're talking about a website, or hey, this is an app on an iPhone, then you're talking about different types of developers, because those are totally different branches of software development. Like the last company I worked at, we had an AR VR group, we had a web group, and then we had, you know, a mobile group that did the mobile stuff. And so you need to figure out who your audience is, or get an idea of who your audience is, what they will be, how this is a solution to their problem, and is it going to be something that's easy for them to use, install? You know, are they going to have a huge learning curve? You know what I mean? And so that's, you know, you have to look at sort of your demographic, who your audience is going to be. Are they going to be tech savvy people? So AR might be something they can do easy. You know, whereas an app on a phone, some people don't know how to install apps on phones. Is it a page on the web, which almost everybody can do that now? Well, some people don't, like some of my relatives don't really use they go to Google and then they type in the address in there instead of using the address bar, but whatever, get there somehow. And so what I have done is that I have sat down with UX designers before, and they have something already drawn out. They have concepts and ideas already drawn out. And then I look at it, and of course, every project has a budget, right? And so you have an amount of time and an amount of resources to build this thing out. And that actually might narrow it down to which technology you use as well, depending on your budget. Because somebody doing a web page might be cheaper than somebody who is doing augmented reality. Or if you're doing it on mobile and it's just mobile web, and it can be a website and it can be a website for your mobile device, then you kind of kill two birds with one stone and one type of development. But if you make it an app that has to go on the iTunes store, that's a whole other development process and a different type of developer, and those guys are more expensive usually. And so that's kind of the approach, because you may sit down with a developer and they're going like, wow, yeah, we're going to need at least 5 people to do that from your designs. Are you sure you want to do it like this? Because I don't, and you say, well, here's our budget. Oh, well, we have plenty of budget to do it. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to need like 4 or 5 guys. We'll say 5 just to be safe. And we have 3 months to do it, you know. And so, yeah, we can have an alpha release of the product by this time. And then, okay, go ahead, Terry.
Hey, Clint, can you explain the process of like the alpha and the beta? Because I'm sure each company does it differently, but maybe Kelsey and Gail may want to hear about that process, because I think that process, it is important to understand a little bit more.
Right. Well, it's kind of like, you know, you have a whole bunch of ideas for a product. So like I tried to start a business with a friend a couple of years back, and it was a punching machine, kickboxing machine where you interacted with it. It's based on Muay Thai. And so we had probably 50 different feature ideas, and they were all really great, right? But then it was just kind of like, what is the minimum viable product, the MVP of features that are needed for this thing to fulfill the need of the problem? It is enough minimum features to fulfill what the customer is going to need. The extra stuff is version 2 or fluff. It's extra add-on, add value add, you know, and some of them some may not even make it into the product. And so when you start off with the process, you have, you know, say you only have 3 months to do this product. Well, you break it into these milestones, right? There's a first milestone, and that's to reach an alpha release of the product, right? And the alpha release is just a basic skeleton of the application, and that you're able to click around in it and get from one sort of feature screen to another feature screen, and that and all the features aren't completely built out, but placeholders are there, right? And for that, you need a set of wireframes that show you what the pages are, and you know, and things don't have to be completely built out by that time, but you need something that is general to get you through it. And then towards the beta, there's a beta release after that, and the beta is more fleshed out, where now you're more focused And so now you go to you go to this one admin page, and now the features are more broken out, where the wireframes are more detailed in how this button makes, this thing slide out, and this drawer appears, and the drawer has a, scroll bar and like all that kind of stuff. And so those things need to be built out more, and the application needs to be almost functional at the beta level. And then you have the, I don't know, you call it the gold master or the release to market candidate, which is the final, where things are really polished. And each one of these phases has a QA process where they QA it, right? And so then you want to make sure that so you have a whole bunch of bugs in this thing in alpha, and you're trying to whittle those bugs down to acceptable level of bugs, because even Adobe products have millions of bugs. Like even this Zoom app has thousands of bugs that we don't know about. We run into them, but not often. And the not often ones are the ones that they have deemed acceptable for the product. And so the next release of this thing, they will have fixed something, but they added a new feature, which created more bugs, and then other bugs pop up. And so anyway, you want to with each phase towards the end, you want the least amount of bugs, because that means the quality of the product is almost ready to be released, put out on the market. And so, the wireframes in the alpha probably need to be, pretty close to what the application needs to be. And then in the beta, they have to be completely refined. And in some companies, the wireframes have to be completely refined before you start the alpha. Because there are companies that do what is called the waterfall process in terms of the designs.
And then also too, there's waterfall and then agile, but that's a whole other conversation as well.
So developers usually use Agile, but a lot of the requirements for other departments might be waterfall and their dependencies. And so you'll probably work with a lot of Agile developer guys. But I would say once you have a rough set of wireframes, even if they're in pencil form, go and find out who's going to be doing the development, if you have a team of developers you're working with. And so you may, if it's going to be an augmented reality or virtual reality, go sit with the augmented virtual reality developer and say, hi, hey, I'm working on this application, AR, VR, and what do you think? And just, and if they're cool dude,
or gal.
Yes, because there's lots of women in development now. Then, you can buy them a Coke or whatever, and just see. If not, find somebody else who's cool, who's willing to do it.
Okay.
But again, the technology will determine the type of developer. Where AR, VR kind of people tend to be a little bit more creative, more artistic. And then you've got the hardcore database developer Java guys.
Backend.
And they tend to be very technical, right? They're very sometimes immovable.
Okay, we're going to shift gears a little bit. Kelsey has 2 questions. So Kelsey, I'll let you answer ask the first one. Kelsey?
Okay. So I've noticed, so the UX UI designers, they work closely with developers, and you even mentioned that you're considering becoming from a developer to a project manager. Is it pretty common to switch positions like that?
Well,
such as, yeah.
So I've been a project manager for many years. So part of my whole journey to where I'm at now, I have managed projects. And so I was also a production manager for a while in my first company out of school. But what I want to do is I want to do a shift over to product management, which is marketing, because those are the people that determine the features of the products. They do the research. They find out who they're going to be targeting with this new product, or they may even come up with ideas for the product, because I was always working on the tail end of it where somebody else came up with the product idea and all the features, and then they worked with a UX team, you know, and then they worked with the design team, and then it got handed off to my side, and then they were like, you've got, you know, 6 weeks to do this, go. And then we would have to just build it. So I was, you know, associated with the building part of it. And at that point, it's too late to make major changes because it's already at the end of the whole process.
Mhm.
So what I want to do, and I've seen a lot of this actually, a lot of product managers who are going back and getting MBAs were software developers. They were working as programmers because they want to shift over to that side and have more say, because there's a lot of people coming up with products and features that are not the sharpest tools in the shed. So it would be nice if that's where I'd like to shift to that side so that I can help influence and make things, because a lot of the time they'll come up with things that we just couldn't do because we've only got 5 people on the team and we
Resources.
need 10. And they'll say, and they've convinced higher ups, oh, we can do it, no problem. And we can do it in a possible amount of time and all that stuff. So me coming from that other side, from the technical side, I can go, you know, this feature, but we can't do it. We don't have the resources. So how can we make a feature like this that's more efficient, where we only need half of the resources? And so that's kind of the shift I want to do. Plus, I'm kind of burnt out with because I was doing 70, 80 hours a week. You know, I'm managing, at one point I was managing a team, and then my team got laid off or they got fired, or, you know, all this stuff. And it's just lots of turmoil. And so, but the UX world, when I first started, didn't exist. It did exist, but it was called something else. And I had been doing UX back then myself, because there was no such thing as that. And so it's really great to see this, it's a science, you know, it's a design, and it's a logic flow, and it's been missing from the whole process. It just really lays it out. It's basically like we've been building houses without any blueprints for years. And that's basically what wireframes are and UX is that you're building these blueprints for the house, but you don't know who is going to be buying it, and you don't care. And hey, we're going to put in, you know, these walk-in refrigerators. Do we need to do that? You know, I mean, so it's like, anyway, maybe I answered the question a little drawn out there.
Yeah. Also too, Kelsey just wanted to know if it's common for designers to become developers and developers to become designers. I know in my path, I've seen that done. I've seen developers become designers and then designers become developers. So can you talk about a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I guess I do have a good background in that too. You know, I started off, I went to computer science for like 3 years in school, and then I got sick of it. So I went in and I went down the path and I got a fine art degree. And then I went on and got a master's degree in fine art. And then I got out into the industry and I'm like, I'm going to be a designer. Yeah, this is years ago. And so I did that. And so what happened is that the company saw that I was really good at programming and the design, working with the design part. So that was the path that I went. And so I ended up getting deeper and deeper into software development, partly because there was more money in it during that time. And partly is that there's more money in it.
Well, nowadays, money, I mean, it's what you bring to the table now, you know. It's
Right.
not only of your technical skills, but also of your soft skills, I think, as well.
I think there's a lot of companies that are expecting more out of designers than they used to, because there used to be a firm separation between design and development. And so developers just expected the designers would just hand them the graphics. Here you go. They're ready to go. They can pop right into your programming, no problem, right? And there's still kind of that expectation. There's a lot of developers, none of them have ever opened Photoshop in their life, you know, or Illustrator. They've never opened an Adobe product other than Acrobat. Their expectation is, you're just going to, designer, just give me the graphics. And, oh, these are wrong, so let's change it, right? But now what they want are designers who understand cascading style sheets, and they want designers who understand HTML. And so they want the designer to also have some technical knowledge that some of the developers wouldn't have, because some of them don't know CSS. They don't know style sheets. They don't know. And so they're expecting sort of the middle road UX people to also be able to do that and code that stuff.
Okay, I'm gonna injecture there. I see Chan going like this a lot. So Chan.
I have a question because.
Yeah, great, go.
So like, based on your experience, you're working with like designers, you were designers and you were project manager, like what kind of a quality skills a designer has that you found that it's easy to, you know, push the project moving forward?
So it depends on what the design is for, right?
Yeah.
Like for instance, you know, like for augmented reality or virtual reality, those designs are different because they now have to be wrapped around a 3D model. So you have to work closely with 3D modelers and animators to do your designs, right? Whereas, wait, can you repeat the question one more time?
Okay.
Like what kind of like skills or quality a designer has that you found it's easy to work with him or her and to help move a project forward.
Okay. Okay, got it. So the best designers that I've worked with, you know, in the last couple of years, have been the ones who knew what the technology was that they were designing for. So they knew that when they designed something, that the programmer could do it, that it was part of the platform. It wasn't going to require them to write custom code to make their design work. I'll give you an example. I worked with a designer one time who came to me, and we were building an interface for a trade show project. And he came to me with this just beautiful design. I mean, it was incredible design. But the problem was the design had a curved scroll bar, right? And the scroll bar was like this. And so I told him, I said, it's beautiful. I would love to do a curved scroll bar. But the unfortunate thing is it will take me 2 to 3 weeks to build a curved scroll bar because there is no component for that. There's no component in my tool chest to do that. And this project is due in 5 days or something like that. So I asked him, I said, since my tool set doesn't support that and the budget doesn't support us to create a custom component, I told him, I said, if we could go back and you could work with the head of the design department to implement those kinds of designs and components that we can use in the future, they'd be great for future projects, but we just don't have a budget for it right now. So he went back and he redesigned just the scroll bar to be a straight one. And it was still beautiful. The design was incredible. And we got the project done on time. And then he was kind of like, oh, I see. So he started doing more research to find out what is built into the browser technology, what, you know, things it could support easily. And then also if a designer finds out what it's going to target, are we going to be building this in React, you know, or we're going to be building this in where there are components that can be just reskinned, right? So if you're a designer and you talk to the key is the designers are not afraid to sit down with a developer and find out what technologies they're going to be using and find out what components that can be reskinned, you know, or used. And if you're able to do that and you understand that you don't have to be the programmer and be able to program it, but understand what's out there. Like I sent these, one time there was a project and I said, here, head designer, here are all the components that are available to you, and we can reskin these. And here's the app for reskinning. So if you want to make the components look a certain way, use this app to reskin it with your designs. That way they can just hand it off, and I don't have to do any programming. I just drop the component in there and I drop the graphics, and boom, it gets reskinned, right?
Okay.
And yeah. I don't hear your audio.
Yeah, because I was on mute. Great.
Oh.
We have G and we have Deanne that is joining us. Say hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
I just want to make sure everybody kind of knows each other. So I'll try to make this quick. I've known Clint for about 20 years, developer. He's been in the industry. So we're just talking about designers and developer, how they work together. And basically, Cheng and I, we met a couple years ago through the CF boot camp as well. And Kelsey's one of my students. And then Kelsey brought in Gail, and then G is one of my students. And then there's Deanne. So everybody I just want to make sure everybody kind of knows each other, ask questions, jump in the conversation. I like to do these last minute stuff. So, because I know the market is out there and people trying to get into the industry as well. So I will be quiet. So Cheng, did that answer your
Yeah.
question?
That answer questions.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
Can I ask a
basically
quick follow-up
try to
on
learn.
that?
Was that?
Go, Gail.
I was just going to say a quick follow-up on that, because you were basically saying having a designer who understands what is possible, which makes
Yes.
perfect sense. So you also said that, you know, from a designer standpoint, understand what platform is going to be used and things like that. At what
Yes.
point in the process would it be appropriate or beneficial for the designer to approach you about that? Would it be, I've got paper sketches to kind of convey the intent and then we talk about it? Or would you know from the beginning?
I mean, basically, by the time you're at the developer, you're showing the you're probably showing wireframes that are, you know, I never see wireframes that are on paper and pencil. But it would be kind of cool if UX designers came that soon, because then you could sit and go, this is not going to be that easy to do. That is, and at that point, it's just erase with an eraser, right? And so, I mean, and also if you develop a relationship with a developer early on, you're starting that trust between the two of you at an early stage. You know, like I've worked with designers where we trusted each other. Like they'd come up and I'd be like, this is not right here. And they immediately take it off and go and just fix it and back in like almost as, I was just like, I was just making some coffee and you got that done already? Wow. So, you know, but just that kind of, because you're both working on the same team, you're working towards the same goal, you want it to succeed. If you could form that sort of friendship, I wouldn't even say friendship. It'd be nice if it was a friendship, but sort of that relationship, because you can also gauge, you know, what kind of a person they are too, and if they're going to be more difficult, which means you may have to interact with them even more. Because I've worked with some people in the past where they were just so easy to work with that we rarely saw each other. They just kind of would only come when the designs needed to be delivered. And, you know, and then they would go off and then come back. But then there's other people where they're working on 20 different projects and you didn't know if they were going to get your designs done by the time you needed to start working on it. And those are the people you have to kind of stay close to, reel them in and see like, okay, here, this is where we're at, right? And then you can also gauge too if it's going to be easy for you to change something, you know, earlier on. And at the pencil stage or at the whiteboard stage, like, you know, if you want, invite a developer into a whiteboard meeting and talk about just really quickly, this is what I'm thinking about, and it's going to have 5 screens and blah, 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 blah. and then just say, what do you think? What is your, and it's going to have, you know, this mind reading application where it reads your mind, and then it, you know, whatever. Because I've heard it all. I mean, I've had people come in and say, you know, we're going to have voice recognition in this app, and we had to build it in 2 weeks. And I'm like, no, we're not doing voice recognition.
Sure. So anyway, G or Deanne, do you have any questions for Clint about development or working with designers, or what you might look for, or even talk about the whole Agile process or waterfall, or anything in your future career you might have questions on?
Well, when you're talking about doing, you know, the pencil or pen and paper stage, don't things change so dramatically between, I'm not sure when to bring in a developer, because
Right.
that to me seems pretty early in the process.
and that's
Early.
It should be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it should be.
But you
Tell them
may-
why, Clint. Tell them why. Please
So-
tell them why.
There are some companies that are fly by the seat of your pants companies, and so things are done where a product is started and delivered in less than 2 months. And so when that happens, everything has to just kind of like flow really fast, right? And so at that point, you really need more communication to go on when the deadline is so impending, because you're not going to have as much iteration. You're not going to have as much back and forth.
Yeah.
And so it's good to have things kind of locked down. I've worked on projects that had to be done in 6 weeks because they were going to a trade show in Amsterdam. And we just had to get this thing all working. It had to be QA'd, you know, all this kind of stuff. And then somebody high up is like, oh, you know, we should have an ear cleaner app in that too. And we promised the client. I'm like, okay, where's the code for the ear cleaner app? We'll try to put it in. But so, I mean, but then you'll work in a company where, like I worked at Adobe, we had like 8 or 9 months to work on, you know, back then it was Flash. And so we had a tremendous amount of time to develop and iterate, and then the product management group, including UX and everybody, had time to iterate on everything before they even started on development. Development would be just handed this thing and say, here, you got to build it like this. And here are the features. We've already determined them. We've just spent 3 months figuring it out. And those folks have to really understand what they usually base it on what has already been built. So like products at Adobe are built on things that are already built before. They're built on code and modules that are already elsewhere. So there's not as much creative freedom in terms of what you can do with the design, because you need to you're also building interfaces across products that are similar, because you want somebody on Illustrator to be able to use Photoshop, and you want somebody on Photoshop to be able to use Audition, you know, and so there has to be similarities between them. So the UX use component architectures that are consistent across products. If you get to smaller companies, it's more seat of the pants. You may be making buttons off the fly that are like a palm tree, like that is a button behind you.
Yeah.
Some weird shape, you know, or a curved scroll bar, or, you know, and so things can change, but it's good to voice the changes as soon as possible to the team. And it's important that as the team works on it, that's why in Agile, you have these little sprints, very short period of time that you work on little features of it to make a preliminary product, you know, or a feature that you're working on. Yeah. And so, you do. And a developer may never see a pencil and paper version of a product. As a matter of fact, I have seen few. Most of the designs I have seen, they came to me at the last, towards when I had to start working on it. They never came to me before I had to start working on it to give me an idea that this is what they're thinking. But the designers who were ahead, who wanted to have a successful run, were the ones who sat down with me and said, this is what I'm thinking. what do you think about this? And then I'd be like, because you can ask a question that just really simple. That looks this looks really simple. I mean, a child could do it. And then the developer goes, well, I know you consider me to be a child, but that will take an extra XYZ amount of time because of this. And they may not even be willing to explain it in technical terms, because a lot of them are kind of up in their own heads and arrogant.
I make them explain it.
Yeah. And that's the reason why she's good, because she will make sure, you know, she'll buddy with them and make sure that they understand that when it comes to them, if they haven't made things clear, then they're going to have to redo stuff. And developers never want to have to redo anything ever. Never want to redo stuff. It's so inefficient.
Yeah.
Why are we redoing? But you go up the chain, and UX, product, they're redoing everything. They're well, what about this feature? No, and then they have meetings about that feature, and like, and there's usually a high up developer director person or whatever sitting in those meetings who's going, yes, our team can do that, no problem, you know. But anyway, I hope that helps.
Yeah, I'm taking a front-end development course right now, and I can see how making changes would be, a lot of
It used
work.
to be a lot easier. It used to, I would recommend that everyone that's getting into design, if it's going to have anything to do with web, is that you learn HTML, just the basics. You know, learn HTML, learn style sheets, CSS, and how it works, right?
Just understand it.
And then if you want to even go a little bit further, if you want to dabble in React or something like that, the simplest thing, there are components out there, and just put a component on a web page, a button component, and make it work, so that you can understand how developers, what they're going to be doing in that sense. Because understanding just that basic thing, you find out its limitations, you know, in terms of, because developers, they just look in squares, they look in blocks, and designers look in all shapes and sizes. But the developer says that has to fit into it. That round thing has to fit into the square space. So.
Okay, I know we have one more question from Kelsey, but before we do, I just want to make sure if you have any kind of question to ask or anything like that. I just want to make sure everybody gets a chance to ask their question.
Yes, well, in fact, I'd like to have a question now. Well, so you talked about I'm wondering what kind of challenges happens between developer and UX designer. I assume there are things that like designers think is possible and it's so easy, but it's not possible in developers' hands, and you know, that kind of thing. How does it work? I mean, the challenge is good to each other, I think, and to make the better product. However, I assume there's only the limitation. How does it work?
So in companies, there are visual design. There are people who actually create sort of the product markups, you know, or comps that are used to show to customers. And those usually have a lot of freedom in terms of what they're showing. And hopefully they tell the client, it's not going to look exactly like this. Because what happens then is sometimes the visual design that ends up in the UXs on their plate has a whole bunch of stuff in it that, you know, if the UX department have components that they use, right? There's a certain set of components that UX uses. And sometimes the visual design doesn't overlap. And hopefully they have, like I said, they haven't promised that it'll look exactly the same. That there'll be some variation. But if the UX department is more advanced and they use a component set that tightly maps to the components that the developers are using, then when you do the UX, when you do the wireframes and they get handed off of the development, the components then match up with components they're already using in their programming language that they're using. And so, and then there are departments that in companies that are just starting off in UX and they don't understand that concept, is that you have far more efficiency, less bugs, and a faster product release if you have overlapping components in your UX designs that overlap components that are used in the architecture. And there are even some companies that go as far as to the designs that you do in UX actually generate code that are bundles that developer can then take and put right into their code without changing much. They just rewire it into the architecture. And those are really efficient, and they usually have a tremendous amount of, or they have faster delivery times because the number of bugs are already ironed out because the components have already been tested in multiple products. And so that's the scale. You go to a small startup company, UX is going to be more of a free-for-all. You go to a larger company, you know, a Facebook or Google or whatever, and they're going to have more structure, and things are going, you're going to be able to build things that you can quickly change too, because you just pull the component out and put another one in instead of having to create a custom component to go into the designs that then the developer has to go and write custom code for too. And if it's a startup, there's a lot of that. And a lot of the time it just goes out the window. Everything is just kind of a custom nightmare. And I have worked in all of them. So did that come close to answering your question, or?
Yeah, that was good. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Okay, Kelsey had a question a while back for you, Clint. She wanted to ask ask about Agile. She's actually heard it a few times. So do designers use Agile or Jira sometimes? Can you explain of the Agile process? Because I know each company has their own version of it. They think they're doing it right, but technically it's a little different. So, I mean, if you can talk a little bit more about that.
So Agile is something that is used more in development. And hopefully we'll see companies moving more towards more of it at the design level. Because in software development, we can iterate. If we use, some companies still use, though companies that will die eventually are using pure waterfall in development, and they probably are dead already. But as for current companies, use some sort of agile methodology, Kanban, you know, Scrum, something. And so for development, we will have a certain set of features and things that we have to build out that matches up to the wireframes. And the unfortunate thing is that once we start those, what are called sprints, where we work on these small nuggets of features in a product, then they kind of want to have the designs already there to iterate from. But it would be nice, and I don't know if it will happen or not, if the whole design side of it, if they did some iteration through there. Most of the time, they just require you to capture all the features and everything and have a full design built out, and then development starts and they just get the wireframes from that, and then they start iterating through their sprints. And so in that way, UX ends up being a waterfall more than agile. The unfortunate thing is that once those things are handed off, it's hard to iterate on those designs because now they're being built out. And so you want them to be more kind of solid. So, I would say that on that side of things, it's less agile, but you can use agile methodologies in how you do things as a UX designer. This is what I was talking to Terry about, because you can break things down. The reason why you do agile is that, say you have to build a house, right? And you put all that into your head and you're like, how am I going to build this whole thing? It becomes this big problem that you have to have. You have to know how to do all that stuff, the plumbing and the electricity and blah, 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 all these little technical things that there are people who are specialized in that. But if you break things down into its smallest component, like my bathroom, then I iterate on repairing my toilet, taking it apart, fixing the parts in it, and what do I not know? And then I can go research, come back, and I can iterate, and then finally my toilet works. And so instead of focusing on the big house, I focus on the smaller pieces, and that's what Agile is. It's breaking things into manageable pieces and making sure you iterate until they're done and they're high quality. And then when you put all the pieces together, there's a whole bunch of high quality pieces that you've gone through and you've iterated through, that you have this quality thing in the end, because it's made of a whole bunch of smaller pieces that you're able to focus on. Because you try to do like 5 things at once, human beings are not great at multitasking, you know. Whereas if you can keep people focused on little things, the problem is they don't do that higher up at the UX design level. And so everything is this big picture. You need to know all the features and all the what do you call the boards, you know, everything involved in the wireframe, and everything has to be kind of perfect, instead of focusing on smaller pieces and iterating through the design of that and just making sure those are all worked out first, and then taking that to a developer and say, hey, we're going to build this, and what do you think, and iterate on that, and then bring it back in, and then it goes into the larger design, and then by the time you're done, it's a better thing. So I would say better for the developers, not so great for the UX design. But like I said, you can use sort of agile process within your own way that you do things. Try not to do everything at once and take everything in at once, because you'll start to lose things. Try to focus on smaller tasks at hand, and as you do each one, just kind of mark them off, iterate through them, and you know, force people to interact with you on those things. Well, this, you know, this has to be done right. Let's get this, you know, I have questions on this thing.
Yeah, I mean, just on the question part, you keep asking questions until you understand, because in my previous job, I'll be talking to somebody and they would explain it this way. I'm all like, okay, I understood at this sentence, and then after that you lost me. So I'm pretending you're like a tape. So let's rewind you back and we go start here. Again, make a joke out of it, you know, and they like, oh, and they laugh and whatever. And then they explain. And then if I get it, great. If I don't, then I keep on asking. I don't care. I want to make sure I understand I'm on the same page as the same person. And, you know, if it takes me 10 times to understand, God forbid it takes me 10 times to understand.
I wanted to ask about, okay, so Jira. So Jira is a tool for managing the project. And basically it's also a tool where you can plug in things for management, right? So you can have a project manager or producer or whatever who is involved with Jira, and development will use Jira because you can put in an Agile component into Jira. Like we can use Scrum, and there are Scrum boards, or we can use Kanban, we can use Kanban boards. And so basically when they do that, it matches tasks with people to do the tasks. So, you know, for developers, there's the board, there's all these tasks, and then a developer gets assigned one, and the task gets put into a to-do column for that developer. And so it's a way for managing and iterating through these Scrum sprints of what tasks there are, who's doing it, is it done? And then there's a done column, and it tells you who's completed those tasks, right? And so, you know, I don't know if they are using those, the Scrum part of it. I don't think they are actually using it for the UX design part. But they may use Jira for just managing, you know, different parts of that process. or they may use a totally different project management system for the design or for product management, you know.
Yeah, because I know some companies they use like Jira, or they use Rally, or they use Trello, or sometimes they might use Monday, or they might use Airtable.
Right.
So, you know, they have a lot of these programs, but again, it depends on the company, and then also it depends on the budget of what they can do. But anyway, we have 2 more questions, and
Okay.
then one of the question is from Chan. It's what's the experience like working in a big team with other designers? And Clint, so you actually started your own business, and then you started another business, and then you worked at a big company, then you worked at another big company, and then you worked agencies. So what was your experience working with other designers? So did you have a good experience? And what were, I guess, I don't want to say pet peeves, but what should our future UX, UI designers or web developers have good habits, I guess, if that's the word.
Sorry about the wind. So I'll give you an example of a really good experience, right? So
Okay, great.
years ago, I worked for a company, and it was the largest online casino company. And so I was a casino game developer for the web. So I did all the slot machines and all that kind of stuff, right? And so we had our group of developers, but we also had our animators and designers right there in our group. So when I worked on a product, I literally could flip my thing around and go, hey, Bob, how's it? I don't understand this graphic, blah, 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 blah. And then Bob would slide his chair over and point at the screen and goes, well, see, this thing is a separate piece of graphic than that thing. And if you just write this, and the guy even knew the coding. He's like, you write this line of code and it makes the truck drive over the top of this thing, and then all these lights, and you win money, and then money starts flowing out of it. And the guy had designed and animated all the assets for this game. It was for a couple different games. One was Wheel of Fortune online, Price is Right was another one I worked on. And it was so awesome because we were there, and whatever questions I had, we were a team. And so it felt like us, right? And so I felt like when it comes to products, I think the most successful is when the team is together and you're there working together. The other companies that I worked for later on, they always separated out the departments. So it's us and them. And so they always created this feeling of that there was this artificial barrier between our departments. And when you went over to talk to them, you had to pass through the invisible barrier into the design zone. And then the designers would look up you and like, what are you doing over here? They didn't say it, like, what are you doing over here, developer? You're supposed to be on your side, And so what I always felt like the companies that whenever there was a product they were working on, everyone could work together in a unit. It made it feel like, I guess the military is the same way. They break it down into smaller units, and they go and they do their tasks together, and they're a team. And so even so, like when you work remotely, if you're on a team with all these people and you see them all the time, every day, you have conversations with them, even like this, like what we're doing, you just have more of a connection because you communicate more and people become more human, more real. Because you start to get jaded and you only hang out with the other developers. Hey, did you see that line of code the other day? Wow, that was really cool. Hey, you want a Coke? Whereas it's so, yeah. So what I feel is more integration in terms of the departments. I feel, and also UX is the key to success, because without UX, you either have design working right with development, and you don't have anyone in between who is going, whoa, designers, you can't do that. And so they already know what can be done, they kind of have an idea of what the developers can do. And so they go, once you change that, that's going to require a, you know, some kind of a component, a tab component. Yeah. So, you know, maybe you can redesign that as a tab, because we have this component here in our wireframe that's a tab that the developers can use over there in Java. And then there's this flow that occurs that wouldn't have had done before, because there wasn't that central, more technical step between. So in that way, I think UX has to be more technical. And also UX has to understand the logic of the app in terms of how the user is going to use it and what makes sense in terms of, you know, the information architecture of the application and the features. They understand that more. A designer is just, you know, going to design pretty things. And the UX says, yeah, we're going to keep that design pretty, but we're going to shoehorn it into this thing that will make it possible. And then you hand that off. And so the places that, you know, I worked at one company recently that put the UX department inside of the design department, and they put the head of the design department as their boss. And it was like, why in the world would you do that? Because it's its own entity. You know, UX design is its own department. At least I see it that way. And so, I don't know, did that help answer that, or am I way off there?
So, Cheng, so did that fulfill your question a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. The great communication is the key.
Okay, awesome. Okay, and we have one more from Deanne, and this is a big, awesome question. Do design language systems help?
Design language systems.
Design systems.
Give me an example.
Okay, remember you were talking about that one designer, they actually designed a scroll bar, right? And it wasn't, and it wasn't a regular component, right?
Right.
So Deanne is asking design language system. That means of a design system.
The design
like,
patterns.
Yeah, design patterns
tooling,
and stuff like that. And you know, and she's asking, do they do they help? B, I guess, you know, what is the difference between industry standards and not industry standards? So maybe you can talk about that.
Google actually came up with that. I forget what it's called.
Material design.
Material design. That's it. And you know, the last company I was at, I was trying to get them to use that, because all of our components could just map to those standard components. And there's a reason why Google made those standards, because they pretty much cover what you can do inside of almost any interface. And all the programming languages are mapped to those. So like if you look at C#, you look at JavaScript, HTML, you look at, you know, all the different types of programming languages out there that have a front-end component, they're using some form of those components. As a matter of fact, they've just added web components to the ECMAScript standard for browsers.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, developers will be able to create components natively in the browser that can map to those standard components that you will use. So definitely learn it, because if you go work in a larger company, if you work on a Facebook or a bank or something of that nature, they're going to want to have those standards, because those are the things that are doable by developers on the cheap. They can, and what I mean by on the cheap, they can have components that have already built and been QA'd, and the components have already been used in multiple products. And they're standards, so that if they have a developer who goes from one company to develop in another company, then they get a wireframe that uses those design standards, they are going to understand it. So the developers will automatically understand it. And the UX, when you jump into a role in a company that uses it, they use the same standards. Mm-hmm. And using component architectures is infinitely better. It has limitations in terms of design. When it comes to visual design, when it comes to designing of the application, it makes it so that you can build something out really fast that works really well. And so I would say definitely learn that, because it will give you a leg up over your competitors when you're trying to go into a company, you know, to do the job. One is that you understand technology. So like I said, learn HTML, CSS, just the basics, and some kind of JavaScript front-end technology like React. I wouldn't say Angular, maybe Vue.js. React is the top one right now. And they have so many components out there that are built for React. A developer can take a component right off the shelf and drop it right into a web page, and it just works. And a lot of those are built on those design standards. So I definitely would learn that. And if you know that, and you know, the design standards, and also that you can actually understand the basics of HTML and CSS and be able to build a web page and be able to drop a component on there, you're probably way ahead of most people. Now, I don't think you have to know how to write, you know, programs in JavaScript or anything, but if you can write very simplistic things in JavaScript and be able to understand JavaScript at a basic level, you're going to be ahead of other people as well. And I'm not saying go be a developer, but if you understand that stuff, it gives you that advantage, so that when you put it on the resume that you have a, you know, a knowledge of these things at a rudimentary level, then they might be looking for that, and it may pull your resume to the top, you know.
Yeah, but not only that, but regarding as Clint was saying, the whole design system and like components, accessibility comes in there as well.
It's huge now.
It's huge, and that's where the standards come in, because you know, you don't want to build something that basically somebody cannot adjust a screen reader, or you know, using assistive technology, you know, and then you have accessibility that people can see, physical and basically hidden disabilities too, because there's a lot of hidden disabilities as well that people don't talk about. So
yeah, there was recently I think it was a dog store online. The guy got sued for like $5 million because his site was inaccessible, and somebody that was like blind or whatever sued him. And it's because I think there's a law that went into effect recently that sites have to be accessible.
ADA compliance.
ADA compliance, yes.
Yep, talk about accessibility. I know.
Yeah. So I hope that answered your question about the design systems and stuff, if that was helpful.
Deanne?
Yeah, that was good. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Okay, any more questions? So was this helpful at all, I should ask?
I hope.
Yeah.
It was good. Thank you. Thank you so much.